hello again, everybody. Lance Russell and Dave Brown right along ringside. By golly, we're about ready to go with more big action.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Georgia Championship Wrestling. I'm Gordon Solie, your host, and we have quite an hour in store for us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Championship Wrestling at ringside. This is Vince McMahon, along with wrestling's only living legend, Bruno Sammartino.
Welcome to this week's edition of Mid-South Wrestling Television. I'm your host, Boyd Pierce, another outstanding card.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories. This week, guys, we dive back into 1982 and some more Georgia Championship Wrestling. And y'all know what that means. That means in order to continue on this 82 project, we need to bring the man himself back on the other side of the microphone. Here it is, the one and only Mr. Jammie Ward. Welcome back to the program, man.
Thanks for having me, Ray. It's great to be back.
Always good to have you, man. We finally kicked off the 82 project. We got through half of January, and this week we're going to cover the other half, it looks like, because not a lot of TV out there for the next couple of weeks of TV, but we do have the complete episode, I believe, for the final week of January. So it looks like, I think we're going to cover 3 weeks of TV and an Omni card somewhere in between.
Yeah, and even though 2 of those weeks we're not going to actually see what happened, just reading the results will probably trigger some memories.
Oh, I certainly hope so. I forgot we have that in our back pocket. Jammie Ward, Back in Time. If you can channel those thoughts, and maybe you can help us out a little bit and share what you might remember from this time period. Totally forgot about that, Jammie. That's certainly going to be helpful. And any of our listeners out there as well that might remember anything missing from these next couple weeks of TV. Now, there is about 10 minutes of footage. I know it's not much, but it's all angles and whatnot, so it's kind of important to have. I posted that, clipped a couple of different versions together into what the best I could there on my YouTube at youtube.com/wrestlinggrenade for the 16th. The entire episode for the 30th? Yeah, the 30th is also up on my YouTube right now for anybody who wants to watch along. We do not have the 23rd, so if anybody's out there hiding it, come on, give it up. Let us know, and hit us up on social media, and we'd be happy to watch, and we'll keep it to ourselves. But I'd love to cover it in long form if we can. But right now, Jammie, we'll get rolling. We'll head back to TBS Studios if you're ready.
I'm ready to roll.
All right, guys, we head back in time. We finished up on the 15th, which means we are back to Saturday, January 16th, Atlanta, Georgia. Again, taping Saturday morning, airing, well, special start time, 7:05 p.m. this weekend. See, I catch every little nook and cranny, Jammie. It's Gordon Solie and Rod Piper on commentary. And as the show gets going, Gary Hart, manager extraordinaire, going to stop by to have a conversation. Heels, Piper and Gary, going to exchange pleasantries per the usual. Piper, proud to manage Kabuki tomorrow night at the Omni, going to be replacing Gary Hart, who is banned from ringside. Now, I think we've talked about this in the past. In reality, Hart is going to be down in Dallas, I do believe, but they're promoting the upcoming Omni event tomorrow night when Kabuki takes on Dusty Rhodes. Roddy says he's been studying Kabuki, looking forward to the opportunity to act as his manager. Gary says he has a gift for Piper later in the show after a Kabuki wrestling matchup. So we look forward to that, as Gary considers Roddy a true student of the business.
And that Roddy is. He has an opinion about everything.
Yeah, and it usually makes sense, even for a heel.
Oh, yeah, Roddy calls her right down the line. Yes, he has a heel slant. Yes, well, as long as Bob Armstrong isn't really included in it.
I was going to say, except for when them Armstrongs get in the ring, a little skewed then.
Well, hey, let's get it right. He loves Brad. He has no problems with Brad. It's the dad he has a problem with.
Well, he does have daddy issues, it would appear. Hot Rod does here. Speaking of Brad, he's in the ring kicking things off. Brad Armstrong scoring a win over Rick Starr. And then Roddy Piper going to ask Gordon, do you mind if I step aside here and I conduct the interview with a young Brad Armstrong? As Piper says he isn't trying to take advantage of the winded Brad by doing this interview directly after the match, but he will admit that Brad Armstrong is a hell of a talent, and he doesn't mean to jump down young Brad's throat here, but Hot Rod is taken a little aback with the bullet. Brad's father, Bob, always lurking around when the younger Armstrong is just working in the ring. Then again, there are also times where Armstrong, the team, maybe Bob leaves Brad in the ring just a little too long, and Bob just kind of standing in the corner, Piper calling into question if the bullet isn't quite managing Brad properly as his father, as his tag team partner. The way Roddy sees it, Bob is a handicap to Brad. He's not holding up his end, calling the bullet dead weight.
Well, Piper is just telling it exactly how it is here. Could you imagine if at that time they would have had Brad turn heel
Oh my
on
goodness.
Bob and team up with Piper, that would have been great booking.
The only problem with that is he's just so young. I don't know if they could pull it off, but you're absolutely right. If they could have, maybe if Brad had owned his craft somewhere other than right around that Georgia area and the fans weren't familiar with Brad already, that would have been great to bring him in a couple years in after he's already kind of getting his feet wet, so to speak. And then they pulled the trigger on that angle. And man, the other would have been instant classic stuff right there with Roddy kind of stealing Brad away from his own father because he was guiding him wrong. Let me show you the right way. Let me show you the light.
I guess Ole did do it the right way in having the Piper Bob feud actually take place.
Yes.
And get physical. But maybe when it was done, that might have been the time to pull the trigger. Because absolutely here, I say in jest this would have been a good time, but probably 2 or 3 more months down the line would have been a perfect time.
No, you're right. Absolutely. Because while Bullet is busy working Roddy Piper, feuding with Roddy Piper, he's not paying attention to the tag team titles. He's not paying attention to his son. Ergo, Brad decides, you know what, Dad, you don't have time for me. I don't have time for you. You're right. It would have been perfect to pull the trigger after the feud with Roddy and the Bullet. So that would have been good stuff to kind of prolong that and add some other guys into the equation. Great fantasy booking there, Jamie. It's almost like you've done a little bit of that in the past. So Brad, he doesn't seem to agree here on commentary with the Hot Rod. He doesn't agree with the assessment that he's stating about his father, but politely responds to Roddy Piper. Brad not going to get angry. He's just going to state his piece. And out comes the Bullet, who has a little advice for Roddy Piper, a little tip for the Hot Rod, if you will. He says if Roddy wants to lose about 40 pounds of fat, just cut off that mouth. And the Armstrong's going to walk away side by side, Brad and Bob, leaving Piper in a huff. Hot Rod a little speechless there, which is not very common, and it's not very long either, because the Hot Rod going to respond to being made to look a fool here, reiterating a previous promo where Bob had told Roddy it was mind over matter. The Bullet didn't mind because Roddy didn't matter. Well, who's still out here? Says the Hot Rod. Who walked away? Asks Roddy. Piper then walks off himself, visibly pissed off. So he didn't get the last word in front of the Bullet, but he got the last word at the end no matter what. So obviously things continue to heat up between those two.
And a great move by Ole here, as I've said before, putting these two guys together. Somebody that can almost go toe-to-toe with Piper back and forth. The only thing I didn't like about this, and it would have even gone into the angle that I was talking about, if you notice, Bob kind of drags Brad off by the arm, or almost by the hand.
Oh, okay.
To lead him out of the interview.
Gotcha. Yeah, that would have, that's absolutely another little subtle thing they could have used later on, trying to pull me away, trying to tell me, make my decisions for me. I'm a grown-ass man. Yeah. That's another thing they absolutely could have played into that. What are you doing? Get your hands off me. I'll do what I want to do. You don't tell me when it's time to leave. So again, it's fantasy booking. It's hindsight now, but that would have been fun, something to play into later on down the road. But right now, it's going to be the Bullet and Roddy Piper heating up very fast, quick, fast, and in a hurry, guys. It's going to get a whole lot deeper before we end this episode of the podcast. But right now, we go back to the ring. Going to see Kevin Sullivan out there scoring a win over Don Gilbert. And then after that matchup, Gary Hart returning as promised. Hart asking Roddy Piper to watch and listen how Gary handles Kabuki in the upcoming match, as Gary has a special presentation and surprise for Roddy following the contest. Now it is Kabuki in the ring, scoring a quick win with a thrust chop to the heart of one Rick Thor. So Kabuki going over there pretty quickly. And then we go back, as promised, Gary Hart with the special presentation to one Rod Piper. So Piper putting over Kabuki's win, calling him a machine in the ring, as Gary Hart then hands over a ring, placing it on Roddy's finger to signify that Roddy Piper and Gary Hart are now as one. That's a scary thought. Gary then has Roddy remove his suit jacket and then stick his ring finger out into the air as Kabuki spews green mist over the fist of the Hot Rod, to which Roddy responds, "It's the color of money, man." Gotta love that. Roddy Piper always thinking on the mic. Now, Roddy has the same power, says Gary Hart, the same control that Hart has over the great Kabuki. Just a warning not to go overboard with it, Roddy. An excited Piper promises Kabuki will wreak havoc against the American Dream.
Yeah, you could just see the love in the eyes of Roddy Piper for Kabuki and Gary Hart. But did you catch at the beginning of the interview segment? Gordon must have knew what was going to happen, and he just handed the microphone over to Gary Hart and walked away. He didn't return until after that mist was blown.
Yeah, accidents happen, and Gordon didn't want to be a part of it. I could see that. Yeah, he definitely stepped out. I wasn't paying attention to how he stepped out, but I know he wasn't in the camera during that segment there, which he would have liked to have been, because it's kind of an important thing. Gary Hart passing the torch, at least for one night, to Roddy Piper to control his great Kabuki. So Roddy Piper going to manage Kabuki to the ring against Dusty Rhodes just 24 hours from now. And at that point, they go off to a VTR featuring an interview with the American Dream, as Dusty says he wishes he had been Roddy Piper's mother or father for just one day, because he'd have been slapping him in the face. But the devil inside Dusty Rhodes comes out tomorrow night in the Omni in the rematch. Dusty, all these months later, well, a couple months later, seeking revenge against the great Kabuki.
Interesting, he's talking about the devil inside, and Mr. Sullivan was just there, huh?
The devil, baby. Devil made me do it, you know. So yeah, Kevin Sullivan was on here. Kabuki, you could look at him as kind of a devilish figure. Gary Hart, he's evil. And now Dusty Rhodes going to channel his inner devil to come after Kabuki. And boy, that would have been fun, a long-term feud. Maybe not in the ring, but on the microphone between the American Dream and the Hot Rod. But for one night only, we'll see what happens when those two are kind of across the ring from one another. Now, again, we don't have the matches from this TV taping, so I'm just going to run over some of the action here so you guys have an idea of who was on the card here this weekend on TV. Jimmy Garvin over Jose Medina. Tommy Rich defeating Ken Timms. Tag team action. Going to see Ron Bass team with the Super Destroyer, and we'll get to why in just a moment. They score a win over Gerald Finley and Tommy Rogers. Jimmy Garvin over Rick Starr. It's Ron Fuller, the Tennessee stud, coming to town over Buck Brannigan. Ron Bass back out there because, of course, he is. Taking on Don Gilbert, another victory for the Outlaw there. Ole Anderson coming out with his new tag team partner, Buzz Sawyer. They're scoring a win over Gerald Finley and Rick Thor, and the great Kabuki again back out scoring a win over Tommy Rogers. Just a couple matches I want to hit on here, Jamie. Super D and Ron Bass as a tag team, and that's because they had announced it would be the Armstrongs versus Bass and Terry Gordy at the Omni, but Gordy seems to be gone from the territory at this point. I believe his last full-time gig was on the 8th or 9th of January, so Gordy gone. Super D stepping in there to team with the Outlaw at the Omni, so they have a match here on TV. And last week, Ole had announced Buzz Sawyer as the brand new co-holder of the World Tag Team titles, and that seems to be, if it is still at this point, it's not going to be for long.
Right, because they are scheduled to face Leroy Brown and my main man, Big Red, tomorrow night in the Omni.
Lottie.
The NWA World Tag Team titles.
Right, so the world titles for now, but soon we're going to find out. Well, we'll save it for later. But Ole Anderson, Buzz Sawyer, what a hell of a team. I buy them as World Tag Team champions. Maybe a little young in Buzz's career to be holding a world title, but it works for me with Ole by his side. And again, the reason we see Super D and Ron Bass out there is because they are now a team, at least for tomorrow night in the Omni. No matches involving the Superstar, though I have to imagine he was there in promo form with a big match coming up, the final showdown with Wildfire Tommy Rich the following night in the Omni. And to close out the show, we hear from the Armstrongs and Ron Fuller, just a generic shill. Ron Fuller, happy to be here, of course, going to take on some of the toughest wrestlers in the world right here in Georgia. As he says, Bob Armstrong doesn't sound too happy with recent issues with Roddy Piper, but he doesn't apologize for interrupting earlier. It's onward and upward for the Armstrongs, who continue to defend their national tag team titles. So again, the Bullet kind of starting this feud with Roddy Piper, but he's got to remember, hey, they've got these tag titles to retain. You know, they got big matches upcoming across the house shows.
And I love the fact that Ron Fuller came in at that time. I did know who Ron Fuller was. I didn't know about him in Southeastern Wrestling, of him being the owner at that point.
Right.
But, you know, I did mark out at that point for Ron Fuller. And Ron Fuller, along with Jimmy Garvin, two more guys that my mom liked.
Okay.
Because I told you before, I used to watch TBS Wrestling every Saturday night with my mom. And
absolutely.
if my dad, who was a wedding photographer, if he was home, all three of us were watching the show.
Yeah, Ron Fuller, I mean, he had the size, and as we're going to see here by the end of the month, I mean, he could go for a guy that size. He was doing things that I was simply going, you shouldn't have to do that, Ron. You really don't have to do that. But he was doing it anyway, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. But Ron Fuller in the territory, doesn't have to drive too far, coming over from Alabama and Southeastern at this point in time. But we go on later that evening to Chattanooga, Tennessee, Memorial Auditorium, January the 16th. It's Bad Leroy Brown and Big Red in the main event over the Masked Superstar and Super D in a lumberjack match. Now, we've got a bunch of other matches on that card, including Jim Garvin over the French Angel. Ron Fuller going to make the town over Ricky Harris. Bob and Brad Armstrong defeating Kevin Sullivan and Buzz Sawyer by DQ. Fun team there. And the Wildfire Tommy Rich battling the Outlaw Ron Bass to a draw. Wouldn't want to have been there for that one, but hopefully it was a short draw. But another card in Chattanooga. But we move on to the big one now, Jamie. We're going to head on over to the following day, Atlanta, Georgia, the Omni, January 17th. Going to see Jerry Oates in the opener over Bill Dromo. Ron Fuller defeating Ricky Harris once again. Grant Apollo still here, scoring a win over the French Angel, Frank Morel by DQ. Jim Garvin battling Kevin Sullivan to a double countout. Leroy Brown and Big Red battling the, I guess, World Tag Team Champions Ole Anderson and Buzz Sawyer to a no contest. They came that close, Jamie, that close.
I told you they should have crowned them champions.
I don't know about that, but it would have been fun to see Big Red hold the title for at least a week. He wouldn't have got it around that waist, but it would have still been pretty good.
Had to done the He Says Calhoun, where he wore it up around his chest.
That's right. Yeah, him and Gurria were tag team champions there in New York at one point as well. Haystacks, that is, not Big Red, although that would have been interesting.
Would have been a great match.
I don't know about that. But, hey, you're biased, and it's okay. They love you for it out here in the regional wrestling world. Your favorites are quickly becoming other favorites as well. Big Red is definitely growing on me. Unfortunately, he just comes and goes as he pleases, and I've even seen a little Big Red as Voodoo Malumba in recent weeks on my TV screen. So, yeah, can't wait to get there at some point at regional wrestling. But we continue on. Lots of main event caliber matches, including the Armstrongs, the national tag team champions, defeating the Outlaw Ron Bass and the Super Destroyer, subbing for Terry Gordy there. We talked about that. And then, here we go. Dusty Rhodes McIndream back in Atlanta, taking on the great Kabuki, indeed, with Roddy Piper by his side. It's Dusty defeating Kabuki. Unless some footage pops up, I'm going to assume that the DQ here in this matchup was interference from Roddy Piper.
Either that or the ref caught him blowing the miss in Dusty's face again.
Yeah, but would you do that again
but most likely Piper, you're right, but it's a shame we don't have the next week's television because we might be able to find out. I doubt Ole wasn't showing anything from the arenas, but they may have made mention of it.
Yeah, I think I think it was the episode before this or just the beginning of 82 here. They did show a couple of matches, arena matches, for the first time in months. So I don't know if that was something they were going to continue to do here or not, but they do not do it here this week on TV, so we don't really have any other follow-up from the last Omni show. And again, like you said, next week's TV is missing, so we don't really know what happens here with this one. We can only speculate, but still kind of odd. Gary Hart barred from ringside, so, I'll just go find a replacement. If it's that easy, why doesn't everybody do that every time someone's barred from ringside? But I guess that's just a nitpicking.
Yeah, it was just Gary Hart outsmarting everyone.
That's exactly what that was. And we've still got one more match, guys. It was billed as the brawl to end it all, if you will, the war to settle the score. No, wait, that was the other company. But it is indeed the final showdown between Wildfire Tommy Rich and the NWA, the National Heavyweight Champion, the Masked Superstar, inside a steel cage. And remember what they said, Jamie? It started in a cage, and it was going to end in a cage.
Well, technically it didn't start in a cage, but we can ignore that. That was a few months ago.
It was long enough ago in wrestling world.
Yes, and this was the original last Battle of Atlanta, I guess you could say.
Right, and I believe it was the old switcheroo inside a cage, too, with Super D when they stole the national title from Tommy Rich. So if you're talking about the title change, I guess we could say this started in a cage, technically, but you're absolutely right. They were fighting long before that and even the other cage match that they had. So this is it, though, guys. And Wildfire Tommy Rich does come out the victor. He regains the national title from the Superstar. We'll have to wait and see if it sticks. And this is indeed their final showdown.
Yeah, but it has been a great feud. They've been going at it since August when Kempatera walked out with the Georgia title.
Yeah, they've got a lot of mileage out of this.
Yeah, Superstar beat Steve-O for the national title. And then Superstar ended up beating Tommy Rich in the title unification match, which I think was a cage match originally. So it is appropriate it got back to this point again. But we didn't have Mephisto, we didn't have Ray Stevens, we didn't have Tor Kamada, and we didn't have $10, $11, $12, or $13,000 on the line.
No, yeah, it's debatable how much money was really up for grabs there at times. I guess they were trying to fool the tax man at that point in time. But it is, if you want to have something done right, the Superstar said you got to do it yourself. He came out here, he did his best inside the cage. Nobody could get in, nobody could get out. And it's Tommy Rich coming out the winner, though, the new national champion. We'll have to see what Tommy does with that belt as we move forward. The following day, Augusta, Georgia, Bell Auditorium, January 18th. Ricky Harris going to a draw with Grand Apollo. Jimmy Garvin over the Masked Mr. X. Ron Bass teaming with the Masked Superstar over Tommy Rich and Big Red. So much for the final showdown, I guess. The Armstrongs over Buzz Sawyer and Kevin Sullivan. And the NWA World Champion coming to town, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, defeating the American Dream Dusty Rhodes by DQ. So Dusty going to stick around another night to get a world title match and a pretty good payday on top there. I wonder what the boys that were working the territory daily thought about that one.
Yeah, this isn't the first time Dusty works Augusta. Every time he comes in for a short tour, it always seems that he definitely works Augusta. And he's always on top, with whether it was Kempatera at one point or now with Ric Flair. I think he faced Flair before in Augusta also. So he must enjoy that town.
I have to ask, one of the boys that were around during this time period how they felt about that. Did they feel like, here nowadays people complaining about so-and-so's left off WrestleMania while a celebrity gets to work, and Dusty's more than a celebrity. But at the same time, did the house double? Did they sell out because Ric Flair and the Dream were there? So the guys, even if they weren't in the main event, they were getting paid more than they would have been had these two talents not come to town. You could speculate. So it's a double-edged sword. I don't really know how, guys looked at things like that back then. How dare this guy come in for 2 nights and take over, my potential spot on the roster? Or, hey man, Dusty's here. That's 2,000 more people in the crowd. And we're making more money even in the third from the top or something. So it's curious to look and see how people might have thought about that back then. And I'm sure like even now, you'll get different answers from different wrestlers.
Do you know off the top of your head, Ray, whether these smaller Georgia towns, such as Augusta or Columbus, did they have syndicated shows where they could pump in interviews, or were they strictly billed off of TBS at this time? Because I don't even remember them mentioning that in Augusta it would be Flair against Dusty.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, Columbus, obviously Fred Ward country. He's got his own TV. Macon had its own TV, I think, until maybe 1980. I could be wrong there. That's how they were able to kind of secure another Macon TV slot when Ole rebooted with Championship Wrestling from Georgia. But in general, I don't know how that worked. I don't know how all the feeds went out and what they did from city to city here, especially in the smaller towns. I don't know that they would have went out of their way to create some sort of a specific programming to cater to a specific town. But something I could ask Bob Roop, see if he remembers. Of course, he doesn't come until 83 though, so I'm not sure if he'd recall how they worked that. But yeah, that's a good question, Jamie. We'll have to look into that.
Well, actually, that would even be a better example in 83 when he comes in, because the Columbus show was over by that point.
The Fred Ward.
If memory, the Fred Ward show was over by that point, if memory serves me correct. Okay. So, yeah, ask Bob Roop next time you speak with him, how exactly did they promote these smaller Georgia towns?
And I'll ask everyone out there, too, that's listening, if you guys grew up in any of these towns or have a recollection of how everything worked in regards to the TV in the smaller cities or even some of the bigger cities outside of Atlanta and outside of Fred Ward country, let us know. I'm curious myself. Good question there, Jamie. As we continue on, you talked about Columbus, Georgia. Here it is, Municipal Auditorium, January the 20th. It's Grand Apollo and Hangman Ricky Harris again in a draw. Big Red over the French Angel. That would have been a nice, quick, short one. Kevin Sullivan.
Two of my favorites.
I'm sure they went about 2 or 3 minutes. Kevin Sullivan scoring a win over Ted Oates on this card. They are in Columbus, so it's Oates country as well. It's 6-man tag team action. Well, there's an interesting name. The Masked Superstar, Ron Bass, and Eddie Mansfield, the Continental Lover, here on this random show over Leroy Brown, Bob Armstrong, and son Bradley. And Dusty Rhodes taking on Kabuki. This time, the Dream getting a 1-2-3, it would seem.
I would guess that would have been the ending, or somebody would have had a DQ in the results.
Yeah, it's another. It's not the Omni, if you will. Though Dusty gonna get a win over Kabuki. But Eddie Mansfield, what a random name. I don't see him on any of the other results here. It almost feels fake, but why would somebody force that name into the results? I don't know. Maybe it was like a Fred Ward favor. I'm not sure what the deal is.
Because I think Eddie was still, I'm trying to remember from when I used to still be able to watch Florida wrestling back at that time, but I thought he was in Florida in the beginning of late 81, early 82.
Oh, it's very possible, but again, that's not crazy. He could have been driving Dusty around. Maybe he was his chauffeur for a few days. I don't know.
That's possible.
We continue on to 21st, heading up to Ohio, guys. Stopping at Hara Arena, Dayton, Ohio. Going to see Brad Armstrong over Ricky Harris. Jim Garvin defeat Buzz Sawyer on a DQ. It's Superstar and Super D over Bob Armstrong and Michael Hayes. Haven't seen that name in very often in the last couple weeks. And Gordy finishes up, like I said, on the 8th or 9th. He's going to come back randomly for a couple shows, like an Omni show and whatnot, in the next couple months. But he's gone for all intents and purposes. And Hayes, not too far behind. Also on the card in Dayton, Dusty Rhodes made the trip up there over Kabuki by DQ. And the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Ric Flair, also making the flight to Ohio, scoring a win over the Wildfire Tommy Rich, reportedly by pinfall. So they got a pinfall finish. Well, after the DQ and the Dusty Kabuki match, you got to get a pinfall here. Ric Flair pinning the Wildfire. But what a main event for Dayton, Ohio.
And Ric Flair probably had a handful of trunks.
Oh, I don't doubt that. Yeah, that's a fun arena. That was a really fun, compact arena. I went to a couple of ECW pay-per-views there, and the noise there is really good. So even though it's not the biggest arena in the world, I'm sure everybody had a fun time there, especially with a world title match like that. On top, Tommy Rich was like the Hulk Hogan, guys, of Georgia, of not just Georgia, but of cable wrestling, if you were watching cable at that point in time anywhere in the United States. So the following day, though, they head back to where it all started, at least in Ohio, for Georgia Championship Wrestling, heading back to the Ohio Center in Columbus on the 22nd. Jimmy Garvin over Ricky Harris, Buzz Sawyer defeating Michael Hayes. There's another Michael match.
There we go. I believe that is the end of Michael right there.
Okay.
From the research I had done from before.
All right, Superstar and Super D defeating the Armstrongs in Columbus, Ohio to capture the national tag team titles. We have new national champions happen right there in Columbus, Ohio, guys. Also on the card, Dusty Rhodes teaming with Tommy Rich over the Great Kabuki and Ole Anderson by DQ. And in the main event, Dick Slater going to be flown up here to defeat the world champion Ric Flair, also on disqualification. So we get a title change. That should make the fans, well, they're not happy because the heels go over. They steal the belts. And then the double main event, both ending by DQ. But some big names, big matches on this card.
And you had to throw Columbus a bone sooner or later because up to now, just off the top of my head, I don't think we've had a title change in Columbus, Ohio. So
no, I don't believe so.
Throw them the bone.
Yeah, I mean, they had all those big matches. They front-loaded those early cards with just the biggest names you possibly could, but not a lot of title matches. We had a few world title matches, I remember, but again, no title changes. So it's about time they did something up there, and it's about time we had something happen outside of the Omni again, because it's been quite a while. So the fans, they know that there's a potential for a title change when they come and see the wrestling live, guys. As we continue on to the following weekend, back to TBS Studios, January 23rd, Gordon Soley and Roddy Piper were indeed the hosts of the program, but we have no footage. Zero. This might be the first time we have zero footage of anything in a very long time, Jamie, unfortunately. And I was able to, at least in 81 for a while there, go back and look at some detailed results from the TV through some of the old wrestling bulletins, as they called them. But I don't have that here for 1982, so all I have is results, match results, and we're going to look at those and look at some of the names involved. And we're going to kick things off with Terry Taylor in town over Buck Brannigan. The Armstrongs, no longer the champions, over Marvin Turner and Jose Medina. Tennessee Stud, Ron Fuller, back again this week on TV over Ken Timms. It's Ron Bass defeating Mike Davis. Superstar and Super D, the new national tag team champions, scoring a win over, here's a fun team, Mike Jackson and Tim Horner. Tim Horner, like the younger version of Mike Jackson, really, at this point in time, I'd say. Jim Garvin
also. One hell of a match.
That probably was fun because Edie loved giving Mike Jackson offense. I mean, every time out. So, that could have been fun. Jimmy Garvin on the card over Mike Jackson. So Jackson going to do a couple of matches there. Hour 1 and Hour 2, no doubt. Kabuki over Ken Timms. NWA World Junior Champion Les Thornton is here this week over Tim Horner. There's another could have been fun if Thornton gave him anything anyway.
Yeah, Thornton wasn't known to give a lot.
Not a lot, but he did have a fun little match with Mike Jackson we might have coming up here next week on the TV. Ron Fuller teaming with Leroy Brown, and they score a win over Buck Brannigan and Ed Timms. Ron Bass again out here over Vinny Valentino, and Super D and Superstar defeating, there's another fun team, Mike Davis and Jim Verderoso, a.k.a. Arn Anderson.
Yeah, we hadn't seen Davis in about 2 months.
Been a while.
And then you got Verderoso, who's becoming a staple now at the TV tapings.
Yeah, Double A and Maniac Mike Davis are one of the rock and roll RPMs later on as well. But it's just a fun little boy, they gave Superstar and Super D some fun enhancement talent to work with. Jackson and Horner, Mike Davis and Arn Anderson. So I don't know. I wish I could have seen some of that. Hopefully the footage pops up sooner or later. But just another fun week of TV. But we don't have any of the storylines, any of the angles. But I can confirm that at some point on this episode of TV, there must have been some serious tongue lashing between Roddy Piper and Bob Armstrong, because it's about to boil over next week.
Oh, it's going to be big time next week.
I don't know what was said this week because they don't really discuss it, but apparently something enhanced it, something provoked it, something brought it right along to what we're going to get to when we get to next week's TV. And we're on our way there, but first we're going to get through another week of house shows. January 23rd, Chattanooga, Tennessee, back at Memorial Auditorium. Brad Armstrong over the French Angel, Jimmy Garvin battling Kevin Sullivan to a draw. It's Bob Armstrong over Ron Bass by disqualification. Ooh, 6-man tag. Big Red here. He's here in Chattanooga, just not for TV. Ron Fuller, that is, going to team with Leroy Brown and Big Red over the Superstar, Super D, and Ricky Harris, who is subbing for Buzz Sawyer. And in the main event, world champion Ric Flair battling Tommy Rich to a double countout.
It goes to show you how much they like Ricky Harris, because just in 1982 alone, this is like the fourth time we've seen Ricky Harris be the substitute for a main event guy that wasn't there for whatever reason.
I mean, he subbed in the Andre match, even at the Omni, if I remember correctly.
Exactly. I mean, Ricky Harris is a big boy. And I'm going to guess this is where him and Ron Bass first hit it off, because they become attached to the hip for the next, early 82, for the next almost 4 years.
Yeah, quite a long while. Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to see kind of some resemblance between the two on the next episode of TV as well. I started to notice. So fun night in Chattanooga. The world champion Ric Flair still in and out of the territory at this point in time, which is always good for business. As we continue on to the 24th, Cobb County Civic Center, Marietta, Georgia. That's Armstrong country. So let's see what they do here on this card. Kevin Sullivan over Grant Apollo. Jerry Oates defeating Buck Brannigan. It's Jimmy Garvin over Ricky Harris. French Angel scoring a win over Brad Armstrong in Marietta. Something ain't right here, Jamie.
No, it's got to be a misprint on that one.
I would have to imagine. I would love to know the story behind it if it's not. Also on the card, it's Bob Armstrong defeating the Superstar by disqualification, and main event going to see the Tennessee stud Ron Fuller and Wildfire Tommy Rich. What a tandem over Ole Anderson and the Outlaw Ron Bass.
Even though I couldn't stand Ron Bass at this time, I think I would have probably enjoyed that match.
Probably
Fuller
would have
and
been
Rich
good.
together, very interesting.
Yeah, as long as someone else is in there to help lead the way. And Ron Bass has been amazingly working the arm, even though he's like using a power slam for his finisher, inexplicably. So him and Ole together, that would have been fun to watch them beat down on either Fuller or Wildfire. Kind of curious looking at the main event there, who was taking the heat, Tommy or Ron? Because Tommy got the pin, but at the same time, I feel like Fuller really wouldn't have been, taking the beat down.
No, definitely Tommy took the beat down in that match. I mean, I still don't understand what Fuller was doing here, as I said earlier on, except for maybe he was just trying to recruit some people to come to Southeastern. And keep his name out there that he's a national act.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, even when he cuts the promo the week prior, he doesn't say that, like most of the guys do when they come in, Georgia is where it's at. It's where all the top talent is. He said, Georgia's where some of the top talent is, because he's a Fuller at the end of the day. He's going to put over his own territory, even on TBS. Yeah. So, but Tommy and Ron Fuller, that's a fun team over Ole and Ron Bass there in Marietta. We continue on to Augusta, Bell Auditorium, the 25th. Going to see the French Angel over Grant Apollo, who's not even getting on TV. He's doing jobs here to Frank Morrell. So I think the writing's on the wall for Apollo. He should be gone any point in time now. Jimmy Garvin defeating Ricky Harris. The Armstrongs over Kevin Sullivan and Ken Timms also subbing for Buzz Sawyer in a no DQ match. So not sure what's going on with Buzz at this point, but he's not making the drive. He's not making the loop here this week. So maybe injured or maybe something else.
Come on, we know what was going on. Everybody that listens to this show probably knows what happened for this couple of days.
I know what was going on. Bob Roop wasn't here yet to go pick him up, throw him in the back seat, and drive him around from town to town, but I didn't say that.
Very true.
Let's go on. The Outlaw Ron Bass over Tommy Rich. Again, another typo? This can't be. I'm going to have to see what happens in Augusta next week to see if there's a follow-up to that.
Probably a DQ is just missing.
Yeah, that's always a possibility. In the main event,
because we're about 2 months away from this more important Tommy Rich Ron Bass matches.
Oh, yeah, good call. I forgot all about that. I'm glad you're here, Jamie. I love the fact that you lived this era. It's refreshing. It helps me out in the long run. As we go to the main event, are you looking at the team I'm looking at here, Jamie, in the main event of Augusta, January 25th? Does it get any bigger, literally and figuratively, than the American Dream Dusty Rhodes teaming with Big Red? Charisma overload here.
15-year-old Jammie Ward would have probably begged his dad to drive to Augusta, Georgia from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, just to see this match.
So it is the American Dream and Big Red, my goodness, defeating the National Tag Team Champions, the Superstar and Super D. Clearly the title's not on the line, but if they were, wow, imagine just what if.
That would be like a dream come true for me.
Even if they won it for a night and dropped it the next, man, that would have been fun times. I'm going to admit that myself. As we continue on to the 27th of January, Columbus, Georgia, Municipal Auditorium on the card. Jerry Oates over the French Angel. Jimmy Garvin defeating Ricky Harris. Brad Armstrong teaming with Grant Apollo to defeat Kevin Sullivan and Ken Timms. Again, imagine subbing for Buzz Sawyer. It's Leroy Brown and Big Red over the Superstar and Super D. Again, must be non-title. So I stand corrected. I thought we were moving away from the Red-Brown team, but they're still teaming up here and there, as Ron Fuller's not making every town right now. He's got to get back to Alabama on certain nights anyway. Main event, I don't know if it was a typo before or not, because I'm seeing again here in Columbus, Ron Bass supposedly pinning Tommy Rich.
Yep, but this would have been for the national title because Rich won the title back on the 17th. So there had to be some kind of shenanigans involved.
Yeah, I'm not really sure because Superstar and Super D should also be the tag team champions here, and they're not dropping the belts to Red and Brown. So I have no idea what's going on. I do know these are the matches that they had as we finish up the house show run this week on Regional Wrestling. We got one more for you, January 29th, as Michael Hayes calls it, Sweet Home Gadsden, Alabama. The old Gadsden, Alabama, the Coliseum. On the card, Jimmy Garvin over Buzz Sawyer. He's back. Grant Apollo defeating the French Angel. Kevin Sullivan defeating Ted Oates. And in the main event, Bob Armstrong teaming with Big Red over Super Destroyer and Ron Bass, going to get the win there by disqualification.
What a team player that Big Red is. He'll team with anybody.
Well, I'm sure everybody's standing in line to team with him, Jamie. I'm surprised you didn't say that.
I love Big Red, but I got to give some other guys props once in a while, too. I just can't be Big Red 24/7.
Well,
even though I would love to have that.
Well,
I got to see if John McGadden can maybe make me a best of Big Red cassette tape, and I could just put in the VCR and just play it on loop.
Wow, the VCR. Showing your age there, Jammie Ward. The VCR, I love it. So Big Red on VHS, the best of. Is it blank? I don't know. Who am I to say?
Hey, it's Bob Smith, and guess what? The Outdated Wrestling Hour is now part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. But hey, no fear, you're still going to hear the unique guests, comedy, music, authors, journalists, funny people. Who knows who's going to end up on the Outdated Wrestling Hour? Remember, it's all new and all old. So check it out in the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and wherever you get your podcasts. Listen if you know what's good for you.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. But that's not all. You can also check out the Pro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Puroresu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to our social media guys for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Plus, I'm constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history. You can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And why not subscribe to YouTube.com wrestling grenade. And of course, now would be a fantastic time to become a WrestleCopia patron over at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. That address again, patreon.com/WrestleCopia, where you get so many gifts, including all of my insanely detailed show notes for every episode of The Grenade Show, Regional Rasslin, and the Monday Warfare podcast. You'll also get early access to a lot of the podcasts here on the WrestleCopia brand, where you can listen days and sometimes as much as a week earlier than the rest of the listeners. But that's still not all, guys. You also get at least a dozen digital downloads for your viewing and reading pleasure each and every month, plus random bonus video drops, and of course, the Patreon exclusive Watch Along series covering mini past WWF and WCW events. And if that's not all, Videocasts, also now a part of Patreon. No subscription, cancel anytime. Give it a try for a month, guys. I think you'll like the content that I offer, and every penny of it goes right back here into paying the bills. So if you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia. Help me pay some of the bills to keep the WrestleCopia podcast network and all of the great shows here up and running for the months and the years to come.
Hey everybody, Gene Jackson here, inviting you to check out the Retro Wrestling Review, where each week I'm joined by some great co-hosts who help me review classic episodes of USWA Championship Wrestling, and right now we are doing week-by-week reviews of 1993. But we don't just do reviews, sometimes we get a chance to interview some of the people who were there and lived it, plus do watch-alongs. It's a lot of fun, so check out new episodes that drop every Wednesday at WrestleCopia.com. And to find links to everything associated to the podcast, you can go to USWApodcast.com.
So we continue on, guys. One last piece of business to cover this week on the program. We're already there. Third week of TV, January 30th, back to TBS Studios for the third time on this episode of Regional Rasslin'. But this time, the entire episode does exist. It's right there at youtube.com/Wrestling Grenade. Go check it out. Lots of fun stuff to be had. And we're going to break it all down for you right now as Gordon Solie and the current Mid-Atlantic champion, Rod Piper, also still here alongside Gordon. So still acknowledging the outside regional title up there in Crockett Land. But Rod Piper is a champion, basically pointing out that, yes, this guy wrestles. He talks about it all the time. He won't let us forget. But we haven't seen him wrestle yet in Georgia.
No, we haven't.
I like that they continue to pump that up, though, because they're telling you he's not just a wrestler, he's a champion. Championship material is Roddy Piper, who requests the fans, please stop sending in the cards and letters. He appreciates it all, but he just doesn't have the time to respond to all of them. So fans, stop sending in all those cards and letters to Roddy Piper.
See, if he had to stop and answer everyone, he'd have no time to be with Gordon Solie every week.
Absolutely, that's right. He might even lost his title because he can't train properly for his title matches up there in the Mid-Atlantic territory. So, yeah, Roddy Piper just begging the fans, guys, you know, I'd love to respond to each and every one of you, but I just don't have that kind of time. So that's what it is. Roddy Piper begging the fans to just, I appreciate you, but just hold on a minute here. As Gordon plugs the upcoming worldwide NWA World Tag Team Title Tournament. More on that later in this episode, guys. So it is indeed vacant, the NWA World Tag Team titles. As the Andersons no more, we know Gene Anderson basically went into, well, we can call it retirement. He pops up here and there, but technically retired as Gene. And apparently this whole Buzz Sawyer, Ole Anderson thing didn't fly for very long with the championship committee there of the NWA, the board of directors, if you will. So more on that in the episode of TV, a worldwide World Tag Team Title Tournament. As we head to the ring, singles action involving the Tennessee stud Ron Fuller taking on Ricky Harris, who is now donning a cowboy hat and a cowboy vest, kind of like Ron Bass. So I see some similarities growing here between the two.
You know, almost like Ron Bass Jr.
Yeah.
A little bit. And the thing that I noticed with this match, it was a very good match. Harris isn't quite as tall as Ron Fuller.
Well, most people aren't quite as tall. Yes, he did have the girth.
But he had the girth, and it was a respectable matchup. But what amazed me was after the match was over, and Fuller kind of falls over to the top rope, standing on the ground, he's taller than the top rope.
Well, I mean, again, Fuller's, what do they call that? A tall drink of water, man. As you pointed out.
6'9", 6'10".
Yeah, pretty solid matchup for sure for TV and for as green as Harris was even at this point in his career. Hour number 1, by the way, the referee's going to be Scrappy McGowan for this one as Harris, again, morphing into a hangman slowly but surely. He's going to be Hangman Harris eventually. I don't know if he does that moniker here in Georgia, but I know he's going to use it in the Mid-South for a little bit anyway. And, of course, beyond that, he will become Black Bart.
Which I love Black Bart. I just didn't love Ron Bass.
All righty. So the
I'm not going to let up on Ron Bass. It just never did anything for me. His son's a hell of a nice guy. I met him down in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
But, Daddy, I never liked him until he got to the WWF.
Fair enough. Well, they say here, they like to exaggerate people's heights, people's weights in wrestling, but they call Ron Fuller 6'9", and he looks every inch of it as he arrives just a year after his brother's departure, both as a booker and a wrestler. Ron going to stun Harris early on with a nice sunset flip from a guy who's 6'9", by the way, guys, as Gordon Solie refers to Fuller as tall, lean, angular, and mean. Gotta love the Dean there, Gordon Solie. Tennessee Stud going to send Harris to the floor to regroup. Ricky going to return, take a high backdrop from the Tennessee Stud, and a drop kick, perfect drop kick by Ron Fuller sends Harris back out to the studio floor. Now, finally, Ricky back in with some hard shots on Fuller, but Ron comes fighting right back, rocking Harris with some shots of his own. Great bumps by Harris throughout the matchup and a vertical suplex, followed by rapid-fire elbow drops by the Tennessee Stud, going to get the win. Just 3 minutes and 30 seconds. But again, like you said, a fun TV squash. And I got to go back. Ron Fuller, excellent drop kick, excellent sunset flip, but you're 6'9", man. You don't have to be doing those things.
No, that drop kick was great.
Right
that
on the
popped
money.
Right out at me. Yeah, it was right there. And Gordon, I hadn't heard Gordon sound so excited during a match for a while because he has seen Ron Fuller since he was a teenager when he first came into wrestling.
Yeah, going back
in
to Florida. Yeah.
And it had probably been at least a couple years since Fuller was either in Georgia or Florida for Gordon to call a match for him. So he was really enjoying himself in this one.
Yeah, no, you could tell he was definitely delighted to see Ron Fuller back in the graces of the TBS Studios once again. As we come out of that match, we go to a VTR promo, a really old promo from, at the time, the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Harley Race. So this goes back at least, you could say a year, could be longer. I don't really know when this promo was cut, but I thought it was really odd. But then they kind of explain it. As we cut back from the VTR, we see Wildfire Tommy Rich, the new National Heavyweight Champion, standing with Gordon Solie. Tommy, denim clad and chaw dipping here. Cowboy hat wearing Wildfire this week, brother. Tommy has flipped the script now. He says Harley Race was holding the belt at once upon a time, the NWA World title, but it's Rich who is now a champion. Once again, the national champion, defeating the superstar at the Omni. Harley looking for his 7th World Heavyweight title. But to get there, Race, you got to go through the Wildfire, who is the National Heavyweight Champion. So it appears the narrative here is the tables have turned.
Yeah, now it's time for Harley to go through Tommy Rich. Now, as far as that interview is concerned, I have 2 theories on it. One is it was just totally irresponsible of Ole to throw up an interview, which I seem to remember that interview from right before he faced Ric Flair in the Omni and then lost to Tommy Rich the next day.
Okay.
Well, why would you play that kind of interview? It's absolutely stupid.
Yeah, you're telling me. I was confused.
If you want to give Ole some breathing room on this one, maybe Harley cut an interview somewhere and it didn't make TV in time and they had to throw something in there.
It's very possible, or they might have needed Harley to cut a promo and they couldn't get a hold of him. That's always a possibility too. And they said, well, just throw something in there. And kudos to Ole or Tommy or whoever came up with the idea to acknowledge that was an old promo with the world title and explain how the tables have turned. So I like the narrative they used. They worked with what they had at the end of the day. But until Tommy acknowledged the fact that video had Harley with the belt, I thought maybe somebody just spliced that in there, to kind of make up for Harley supposedly having an interview, and maybe it wasn't on the tape or something. But I was happy to find out, nope, that's just what they aired. A little odd, but it is what it is. So Wildfire and Harley Race at the upcoming Omni event for those curious, and they're both kind of touting it being a number 1 contenders match. So whomever walks out the champion should be next in line for the world champion Ric Flair. As we continue on, we got more interview time. This time, Tennessee stud Ron Fuller and Leroy Brown going to stop by, the latest team to form, and apparently coming after the NWA World Tag Team titles. Leroy refers to him as the biggest team in the world today, maybe in tallness, absolutely. Fuller then discussing his workout regimen, at which point we go to a video showing highlights of how Fuller trains to stay in condition. We go back to a VTR likely aired in Alabama multiple times. We see the Tennessee stud doing push-ups, lifting weights, running upstairs with what he calls leg weights on. They muted Fuller mentioning the assassin. As we see a clip, Fuller defeating the assassin with the famous Fuller leg lock. They actually bleep out the name assassin for some odd reason. We also see, we go back in time to 1974, a clip of Ron Fuller defeating Buddy Colt to win his first ever Florida heavyweight title. And then some ring sparring clips, some neck bridges, things of that nature. Years ago, man, performing those feats, just amazing. But Ron Fuller's a lot older here than he was in a lot of this footage.
Oh, yeah. They definitely went back into the
archives,
the vaults to find some of this stuff, the archives, as Gordon would say. But I don't know why he just didn't bring some of his Southeastern stuff with him.
Yeah, that's a good call. Maybe he didn't feel like it. I'm not carrying them tapes with me, them reels, if you will. So I don't know. But they go back and they obviously pulled that out of their archives. I'm assuming they showed that once upon a time back in the 70s or something. And they had it there to use it again. As Fuller putting over, out of all of the exercising he does, all of the working out he does, it was running. Running is the ultimate. That's what you need to do if you're in any type of sport, is do as much running as you can to stay in shape. And that forces, quote unquote, forces Roddy Piper to join the segment because he doesn't see the point of showing this film. And I did say film, guys. We'll get to that in just a minute because he's called these VTRs, he's called them films in the past, Jamie. This is not the first time he's pronounced it like that. But he says it looks like Ron was airing this just to put himself over. I had to pop for that one. Piper, he also doesn't see the point of running. It has nothing to do with fighting, says the Hot Rod. He doesn't do a lot of running. Ron Fuller then going to catch Roddy Piper, call him out. It's not film, it's film. So I had to pop for that.
It's not Roddy's fault. He is from Scotland after all, and he hasn't mastered the English language, or at least the American vernacular.
For someone from Scotland, I've never
He's still
noticed.
Working on it.
Roddy's never had any type of accent that I've noticed anyway. He's got his own accent. Doesn't sound like he's from Scotland, but that's another story. He's a bit Scotch, maybe. I don't know about Scottish. As Ron Fuller, he doesn't know anything about this Roddy Piper guy, if he even holds any titles, which we just acknowledged at the top of the show. He's a champion, but Ron Fuller wasn't paying attention. But quite frankly, Ron Fuller doesn't care to know Roddy Piper, but I love that he called him out there. And first of all, it's not film, it's film. So these guys, you get a little couple verbal jousts here, ad-libbing.
Yeah, it would have been great to see a short little Piper Fuller feud.
That would have been fun. No doubt about it. There's a lot of guys here, great talkers, and certainly still in their primes. Would have been good times. It just, unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be, as Piper's kind of locked in, and we don't know how much longer Ron Fuller is going to be here either at this point. As we go back to the ring, we're going to see the new National Tag Team Champions, Masked Superstar, Super Destroyer over Don Gilbert and Jim Carlisle. Two big maskmen, the monsters in there, starting off with some great wrestling on Carlisle, making them double dangerous. They're not just big and mean and tough and brawlers. They can wrestle you on the mat too, making them, double dangerous, as I said. Eventually, though, this one broke down. A lot of pummeling by the masked duo. We see Demolition Axe-style pummeling by the Superstar. Go figure. Poor Don Gilbert going to be on the losing end of that one. And then we lose the feed. I presume the masked tandem had to have scored the win here. We only get about 2 minutes of the matchup. The entire show is complete outside of whatever happened here with the rest of this match.
Yeah, I picked up on it also when I was watching. I couldn't figure out how it went so quick. So either maybe the person who was taping it had an issue, or maybe the network itself when they aired it.
You know, I kind of felt like it was the network. It went to black. It didn't feel like it was a VCR deal or, a pause or anything of that. It really felt like TBS went to black. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, very possible. But hey, since we're talking about Super Destroyer, I want to mention about recently listening to the episode of the Bob Roop Show that you and Bob do. And I heard him talk about what a nice guy Scott Irwin was. I never heard anything one way or the other on Scott Irwin before. And it was really nice the way he spoke about Scott and what a sweetheart he actually was.
Yeah, he puts over Scott quite a bit whenever he pops up into conversation. He said he's one of his most favorite guys to hang out with or drive with down the road. He was always fun time and very outgoing based on some of the bar stories Bob tells and things of that nature. So, yeah, he definitely took a good liking to Scott Irwin, who knew that, his time was short here on Earth the last couple years he was here. So he was living life to his fullest, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I enjoyed him, and it was great when both Irwins came in there at the end of '84 when they started back up again.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't there very long, but it was nice to see the Irwin brothers together on TBS.
Yeah, that was about the only time I could stand to watch Bill, to be honest with you. That's my opinion, guys. I said it. So we go on with the program. So we're starting to see some of these tag team matches trickle into the television program because, well, the world tag titles are vacant. And now we go off to a VTR from Championship Wrestling from Florida. Going to see Jack and Jerry Briscoe take on John and Rick Davidson, the Davidson brothers, taking on the Briscoe brothers. Fun finish sees Jack Briscoe place one Davidson in his famed figure 4 leg lock. And when the second Davidson comes in to aid, Briscoe, while still applying the figure 4, nets an inside cradle on the second Davidson as well to score the 1-2-3. Great stuff there by the former world heavyweight champion Jack Briscoe, as the Briscoe brothers, just one of the many teams entering that NWA World Tag Title Tournament.
Ray, I'm thinking we probably missed something on the January 23rd show where they announced that Ole and Gene were probably stripped of the tag team titles.
Well, they had moved away from Gene because Buzz, remember, Ole said he needed to pick a new partner, and he had announced Buzz. So you're probably right. They probably did make some sort of announcement on that episode.
Otherwise, they would have started this show off saying the NWA has said that
Good call.
Buzz Sawyer cannot be Ole's partner. I don't know what was going on in Mid-Atlantic at the same time, if Ole had substitute partners up there also. But that's probably what happened last week. Just Gordon, real quick, said something like the NWA has stripped Ole and
there may have been a
tag
promo.
titles, and we're going to have a tournament.
Yeah, there may have been a promo with Ole cussing and bitching about it. Who knows what happened. Hopefully, some footage pops up or somebody has some sort of a memory of what might have happened there. But as we come back from break, Jamie, you lied to me. I thought we had seen the last of this guy. Steve Olsonowski. Steve-O is back. Mr. Personality is indeed back in Atlanta, sort of. Still injured. A couple months now he's been injured. Still dealing with that injured wrist. It supposedly started off as a staph infection. Led to a dislocated wrist because of all the swelling, or so he said, but he's still out. And that makes me kind of wonder what really is going on with Steve-O's arm at this point in time, as he talks having a time of injury. I wrote, my God, could you be any more milquetoast than this guy? It's a time of injury, Gordon, says Steve-O. It'll be another 2 or 3 months before he can even get back in the ring, hopefully, at that point in time. And that's when Roddy Piper going to chime in. He says, I'm a true athlete. Injury or not, Roddy Piper says he would still go. Cue the chaos, as then out comes Bob Armstrong. Multiple wrestlers trying to hold the bullet back. Studio fans going nuts as the bullet coming straight for Roddy Piper, but being restrained. Piper encouraging Steve-O to go join Bob, help him out over there, as Roddy laying a sly comment in that, Bob, you must be injured, because if it was me, nobody could hold me back from getting to you. And I wrote LOL because Roddy had some really great stuff here as he keeps calling out Bob Armstrong. Steve-O even has a few words for Piper. He says if he were healthy, he'd get Roddy in the ring right now. Piper mocking Olsonowski as well at that point. But Roddy then going to talk Brad Armstrong whining to Father Bob. He says Brad told his daddy to run and hide because when RP speaks, people listen. Again, something happened last week because Bob Armstrong just coming out on the jump like that without any real reason this week. I don't know, man. It was hot. I mean, the crowd was hot for it. Bob Armstrong was hot. Roddy was saying everything. It was classic peak Roddy Piper on the mic.
Oh, absolutely was. And it brought back that memory for me. I had something to do on this Saturday night, and I did not see this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom recorded it on a cassette tape for me. So I had the audio of the entire show.
Oh, wow.
And I believe I still have it in my attic to this day, and in a box of cassette tapes that I saved. And I listened to it, the next day, the whole show, and I couldn't wait to see this angle. And then they showed it again on the Best of show that day. I mean, we're not quite there yet, but this entire show, just a memory that just came up. But yeah,
I can see where this would stick with
Piper
you.
was hot. Armstrong was hot. Steve-O was standing in the middle like, hey, Gordon, what am I supposed to do? Just stand here? Very disappointed in my man, Steve-O. Being away for that month and a half, he lost it. He's not even Mr. Personality. It's like somebody stuck the hose up his rear and sucked the personality right out.
Speaking of personality, it's Steve-O, and I'm not even joking here. Just recently on Twitter, and I retweeted it to you, so the next time you're on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, go check it out, Jamie. But Armstrong Alley, who's pretty famous for posting footage, crispy lettuce, if you will, he posted a little segment from, I believe it was 87 AWA, and Steve-O cutting a promo in the ring, clearly drunk off his ass, slurring his words, saying things that you would never imagine Steve-O to say. He finally found his personality. It just took a bottle of Jack.
Wow. I just opened up X and look at him in the muscle T-shirt. Look, he looks like he's beefed up a little bit. But probably not. Evidently, that's not all he was.
That was from the arm injury, probably. He beefed up. Yeah, this arm injury that's been going on for months now, and maybe he'll be back in 2 or 3 more. It's interesting to see that he's still here. He's still lingering around Atlanta at this point in time, waiting to heal up. And just very odd, but there's a reason why Steve is out here, and that's because after this altercation, Roddy Piper's going to disappear for a while, I think. So Roddy Piper going to cool off.
But he does come back out.
Yeah, Roddy Piper going to cool off for now, and instead we're stuck with Steve-O on commentary with Gordon Soley for a while. I remember correctly at this point in the program. They're interrupted after this by Buzz Sawyer, who has a problem. Well, you're telling me. Buzz can't seem to find anyone to wrestle him on TV. Not last week, not this week. He said he done ran Mr. Wrestling 2 off to Florida to take a vacation. He doesn't want to show his face around here no more, or I guess mask, on TV after losing to Buzz in a Texas death match at the Omni a few weeks back, if you guys recall. So Buzz Sawyer bragging about putting down Wrestling 2, and again, just a way to get him on TV. You can't find an opponent. Got to wonder if Buzz is nursing some kind of an injury. We haven't seen him in action a whole lot other than in Gadsden over the last, apparently he didn't work TV, so say the last 10 days.
And he must have been self-conscious about his hair because he was wearing a baseball cap in both interviews.
Somebody said a few things, huh? Is that what it is? I wouldn't say it to his face anyway, but, we're back to the ring. The Outlaw Ron Bass taking on Jim Gallagher. 4 straight minutes of amazing Anderson-like nasty arm work, and then Ron Bass pivots to the Texas Stampede, the Power Slam, gets the win in 5 minutes and 3 seconds. I just wrote, okay.
It's a shame they didn't bring Bill Watts up for a week to squash his ass.
Oh, the Battle of the Stampedes. Let's see. Texas versus Oklahoma. It goes way back, guys.
It has more meaning than we thought.
Yeah, apparently so. As we continue on, Tommy Rich going to return, and boy, he's going to do that early and often here on this episode of TV, talking the February 7th card at the Omni. Again, the Wildfire taking on Harley Race, and the winner, boy, they have to be in line for an NWA World title shot, thinks the Wildfire, taking on Ric Flair in future weeks. We've already seen Tommy do it in some of the other cities this past week, but they're talking about the Omni here. He says again that Harley Race looking for that 7th world title. Tommy would love to have his 2nd NWA World title run. Good point. Tommy and Harley, both former world champions.
And with the push Tommy's going to get for the next year, because he doesn't really start to slack off until 83, Tommy very well could have won the NWA title at any point. And with the TBS exposure, he probably would have been over in every, area that he went to.
Yeah, and in 1982, when they're running new states and things of that nature, it's really expanding. The Wildfire Mania is running wildfire, if you will.
See Tommy Rich go into Dallas as a heel to go against the Von Erichs.
Wow.
Imagine those interviews.
My goodness. Yeah, that would have been interesting. And then bring the Von Erichs over as heels and Tommy. I don't know. That would have been something else. We continue on. We get a Ron Bass interview, still promoting his tag team with Terry Gordy for the Omni against the Armstrongs, but no longer the champions this time around. So last Omni show, it was supposed to be Gordy and Bass versus the Armstrongs. And of course, Gordy a no-show there, Super D stepping in. And so they try to bring it back again, Ron Bass and Gordy again versus the Armstrongs at the next Omni card, which, spoiler alert, also doesn't happen.
Yeah, did you catch the Freddie Miller announcing the Omni card? Not only does he say that Ron Bass is going to team with Terry Gordy, he also says that it's going to be Leroy Brown teaming with Big Red.
Oh, did he? Okay. Well,
So
that
they
might have
must
been a
have
slip of the
recorded
tongue.
that. No, they had the graphic up there. So
Okay.
they must have did that before they knew that Big Red was actually going to leave.
Oh, okay. I gotcha. Well,
I'm guessing. Same thing with Gordy.
Right.
But Gordy's not at the show either.
No, he's not. That's two Omni shows. Boy, they were determined to get Gordy in to do a job on the way out, and it just ain't happening, I guess. Gordy ain't no fool. We continue on back to the ring. Tag team action. Jimmy Garvin and Brad Armstrong taking on Kevin Sullivan and the French Angel. It appears Bob Armstrong pulled himself out of this matchup, so Jimmy Garvin got to replace him here with his son Brad. Gordon solely speculating it's got to be because Bob can't contain himself around Roddy Piper. Roddy back out here. He thinks it's a lack of guts that the reason the Bullet's not out here. As Brad looks great early on with Frank Morrell in the ring, who surprisingly keeps up with Armstrong. From there, it's a whole lot of fast tags from both sides. Nobody can maintain control for too long. Really great fast action from both teams. Jimmy Garvin, though, finally missing a drop kick, and the heels take control about 4 minutes into this one. Meanwhile, on commentary, Piper pushing the envelope, referring to Bob Armstrong as a gutless coward, and his son a sniveling little brat. And there it is. Bob Armstrong back in the studio again, guys, being held back yet again, but Roddy Piper this time into the ring. And here comes the Bullet. The fight is on. Nobody holding him back. Piper and Bob Armstrong rolling around the ring, throwing punches, the crowd eating it up, going nuts. Kevin Sullivan and the Angel holding off Garvin and Brad Armstrong. And here comes the locker room. Even Ole fucking Anderson out here in a suit trying to separate the melee. And you can't hold him back. Fighting through everybody is the Hot Rod and the Bullet. Awesome brawl. Awesome fan response. Great television angle.
Yeah, and this is what I was talking about on that cassette tape I had. I heard this thing, and I could visualize exactly what was going on. And then getting that chance on Best Of that they aired it. I mean, I would have gone all week not sleeping if I hadn't been able to see that on Sunday, because I know it would have aired the following Saturday also. But that was just one of the greatest angles in my Georgia viewing experience. Yeah. Seeing these two guys after almost 3 months of buildup finally collide. It was great.
Yeah, the slow build was absolutely worth it. There was the eruption, the explosion. They finally get a hold of each other. And Roddy, the heel, he's no coward. He's not holding back. These guys are rolling around the ring, both of them fighting through all of the wrestlers trying to pull them apart. And yeah, it was a super hot angle. It really elevated the entire thing, escalated this to, I think they're going to have a match now at this point after this one. So, yeah, but I can only imagine the kids today, they don't know the struggle of recording things in audio form off your TV, because if that's the only option you have, then you got to do what you got to do. And I can only imagine being put in a situation where you hear these things going on, and even if you can visualize them in your head, you're dying to see what really happened there. And I could imagine you just sitting around, as you would say, chomping at the bit, waiting for that Sunday night airing to hopefully replay. And apparently they didn't let you down.
And it wasn't just a matter of putting the cassette player in front of the television. My mom actually had to get a microphone out connected to the cassette and tie the microphone around the old dials. The old dials on the old television.
Absolutely.
And hang it down so right over top of the speaker, so she could record it.
Well, kudos to Mama Ward, man. That's good parenting right there. The show continues on. Ron Fuller back out for an interview, talking what just went down between Bob Armstrong and Roddy Piper. Fuller says it takes a while to light the fuse of the Bullet, but once he does, he's a stick of dynamite, just waiting to go off. And Roddy Piper better be looking over his shoulder in the parking lot, everywhere. Fuller would personally himself like to slap the Hot Rod as well, right across the mouth, who he calls one of the most irritating people he's ever met. So this is the point where Roddy leaves the TV program, and now Steve-O going to join us, I believe, for the remainder.
Yeah, lucky us. But now I think of it, maybe it was Bob Armstrong that talked Ole into bringing in Ron Fuller with maybe hopes that Fuller would get into the feud with Piper.
I don't know. That seems like a bit
along
much.
with him.
I don't know why Bob would want so many top stars feuding with one guy.
Well, him and Fuller go way back.
Sure. There's no doubt about that. I mean, you see one, you see them both. Usually it's in Alabama or Knoxville or something like that. But in this case, it's Georgia at the same time. But again, the stud, I mean, he's got his own territory to deal with. He's a promoter. He's not just a wrestler. So I don't know how long he's going to be around, but he's going to be at the next Omni show. I do know that, I believe, if I remember correctly.
He's here until sometime in March.
Okay,
very similar to his brother when his brother left at the beginning of March.
Right. Well, we continue on into hour number 2. Roddy Piper being replaced by Steve-O on commentary, and our referees being replaced. Scrappy McGowan out. Enter Nick Patrick for hour number 2 here in the ring as the world champion arrives. Nature Boy Ric Flair is here in the old classic green, I called it bathrobe, a little different than his usual robe, but still looks pricey. And he's going to be in action later here in the hour, but right now he's going to watch the national champion Tommy Rich in action. We go to the ring for the Wildfire taking on Joe Powell. Ric Flair remaining on commentary as he studies Tommy Rich as a potential next challenger for the world title. Tommy knows the champion's watching, so we get some actual wrestling from the Wildfire here, working in the leg of Powell. And then randomly, out of the blue, the Thez Press going to end this one 8 minutes and 1 second. Not exactly sending a message to the world champion when it takes you 8 minutes to beat Joe Powell, but we had to kill time, and who better to kill time with than the top superstar in your territory?
It was a good match with Tommy. We haven't seen Joe Powell for about 2 years in Georgia since he was unmasked as the fake wrestling number 2. And watching that match and looking at the body type, now I know why they picked him to be the fake wrestling 2. I mean, if you'd have thrown the mask on him, I would have thought it was 2. That body was just perfect.
Yeah, just throw him in a diaper again, and away we go. But, not only do we get 8 minutes of the top baby face in the territory, Tommy Rich, on the TV screen, but we get 8 minutes of the world champion on commentary, pushing Tommy Rich, putting himself over, putting over the world title. So they did a great job here of utilizing Flair. And he's going to wrestle still, too, so they're going to get their money's worth or whatever Flair was getting paid for this stop by here on TV. But Flair continues his thoughts after the matchup, giving props to guys like Tommy Rich, Ron Fuller, Ron Bass. What an interesting name there. Wrestling 2, the Briscoes, the Funks. He says they're all great wrestlers, but they're no Ric Flair. Flair also uses this cable feed to promote next week's show in Greensboro, where he takes on Ricky Steamboat. As he says, this belt, the world title, means everything to the Nature Boy, and you're not going to take it. Shout out to Ricky Steamboat, a big matchup coming up in Greensboro, promoting it on cable TV because he's there, so why not?
Yeah, Flair loves a name drop, and he's a champ, so he should name drop. But as far as Ron Bass is concerned, knowing where we're going, I wonder if all we had this stuff booked out a couple months possibly, and asked Flair to just drop that name in there.
Yeah, it's very peculiar when you're saying the Funks and the Briscoes and the Steamboats and the Fullers and the Riches and the Ron Basses. Yeah, it's very weird. That was a weird one right in the middle of all of that. Snuck it in, though. And again, we saw Ron Bass score a couple wins, some type of wins over Tommy Rich on some of the house shows. So clearly, they have plans for whatever's to come here between the Wildfire and the Outlaw. But right now we go back to the ring for another world champion, this time the junior heavyweight champion of the world, Les Thornton out here taking on Mike Jackson. As Steve-O out here on commentary, probably not the best choice for a match like this. Amazing headlock, hip-hop takeovers, as Gordon Soley refers to them, Cornish hypes by Les Thornton, and a nice snap hip lock as well. So Thornton showing off that UK style, and man, he's just an amazing talent in there. Mike Jackson going to wrestle back, though. Great bridge out of and an arm drag takeover, leading to Les becoming a little more cautious in how he approaches Mike Jackson moving forward in the matchup. Nice double underhook suplex by Thornton, but Jackson holds on to the armbar through a double underhook suplex. I'd never seen that before.
No, it was a nice move.
So when none of Thornton's counters work, the man of 1,000 holds guys, to break the hold, he grabs the ropes and then lands a cheap shot. See, he's always got that in his back pocket. Nasty European uppercuts by Thornton on Mike Jackson, up and over in the corner as a schoolboy from Mike going to surprise Thornton with the 2 count. And then Jackson going to try for an O'Connor roll, but Les holds onto the ropes. Mike taking a nasty back bump to the mat. And now Les Thornton feels the tide is turned, begins to punish Mike, and a gut-wrench suplex ends it. 6 minutes, 38 seconds. I wrote, good TV match. Mike always looks competent out there. Even Thornton giving him a little bit.
Yeah, they should have always given Mike a few TV wins here or there. I mean, I know they did occasionally, like in the last 5 minutes of a show, but they should have built him up a little bit more, just 4 matches like this. So it gives him more credibility of possibly pulling that upset off. Just like Ric Flair does for him in a couple months, I believe. And that match airs for the next 20 years on TBS.
Yeah, I'm glad that we were able to showcase Les Thornton out here just kind of coming through. A lot of people don't utilize the NWA World Junior title because there's not a lot of World Junior caliber wrestlers, I should say, out there in the market, at least that you can push to any type of level talent, because the world title is where it's at. Ric Flair is where it's at. But it was good to see Les Thornton come through here and pick up a fun little victory. And it wasn't a bad match at all. I enjoyed it. Hopefully, we can see Les stop by again, see what he does with someone else, the caliber of a Mike Jackson and that level of a junior heavyweight. But we continue on. We've got a couple of promos here. The Masked Superstar and Super Destroyer, the new National Tag Team Champions, going to talk about their upcoming match February 7th in the Omni against Leroy Brown and Tennessee stud Ron Fuller. Superstar says he's sick of these wrestlers coming out here talking about all the training that they do. He's got news for guys like Ron Fuller. Everybody trains, or they wouldn't be here. The Masked Men, they weren't handed these tag team titles. They earned them. I love the promo. Bill Eadie, he's done doing those shouting promos he was doing with Tommy Rich for the last several weeks. He's back just being an amazing, articulate heel promo here. Of course you work out. We all do. What's your point? I'm not a tag team champion by osmosis. We won these things.
I really enjoyed the team of Superstar and Super D. As I said before, Superstar was one of the first heels that I started to root for. And when these guys won the title, I was behind them.
Yeah, no, they make a great tag. At first, I was like, why waste two good singles talents by putting them together when they're so similar in regards to they both have masks? But it's grown on me at this point. So, yeah, it's working for me now. I didn't like it so much at the beginning, but I'm not minding it so much. And now that they have the belts, I'm ready to follow this run. Maybe if it's a couple weeks, maybe if it's a couple months, I'll have to wait and see. I don't know how it's going to play out myself. I'm sure Jamie has an idea. But we hear from the other side, Fuller and Leroy Brown going to rebut. As what else would they say? They're going to be the next tag team champions, of course. They're going to walk out of the Omni, the new national tag champs, say the stud and bad Leroy Brown. So we continue on. We go to a VTR back to Florida again. This time it was, at the time he was the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. His second run. So this goes back a ways. Harley Race taking on Reggie Parks. It's going to finish him off with a big body slam, setting him up for a middle rope diving headbutt. Match goes about 4 minutes, and it's nice to go back in time and see some old Florida action. Harley Race scoring a win over Reg Parks.
And boy, is Reggie Parks ripped.
Yeah, he was put together. He was a well-put-together guy. No doubt about it.
You didn't see guys ripped like that at that point. I don't even think Superstar Billy Graham had a physique that could match Reggie Parks' one.
I don't want to put him in the class of an actual Mr. Universe, but I would say he was leaning more towards that type of body mold than the Superstar Graham type of steroid look.
Yeah, and this match had aired a couple months ago on the Sunday Best Of show because I had remembered seeing it.
Okay. Well, fair enough. So we come out of the Harley matchup from Florida, and we go back to Tommy Rich again, who's going to talk about Harley Race, again putting over Harley as a former world champion. But Tommy is the current national champion, and he says that's what makes him the number one contender for the Nature Boy. And they're going to compete, Harley and Tommy, over that title, the national title. Apparently, at this point, they're basically saying the winner's going to walk out and get themselves a title shot against Ric Flair in the not-so-distant future. And speaking of the Nature Boy, we go back to the ring. He's here in action. TBS Studios, world champion Ric Flair taking on Rick Benefield. And Steve-O still on commentary. I wrote, "Oh, where are you, Roddy Piper?" As Benefield going to surprise Flair with a hammerlock early on. But old Nature Boy quickly back in control. Gut-wrench suplex. Thunderous chop. I wrote, "Damn, he chopped him so hard." And now we go to school, brother, says Ric Flair. Awkward-looking vertical suplex. Just kind of scary. We saw that with Ric Flair not too many months ago, and I believe a guy walked out of there with a broken arm from it. But I don't know. I'm not saying it was Flair's fault, but it looks eerily the same as Flair drops Benefield with that suplex, and the figure four going to get the win. 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yeah, it could have really been another wrestler biting the dust. It was a Bobby Garrett.
Yeah.
He had body slam like that. And we haven't seen Bobby Garrett since.
No, I don't think he returns. I think when that happened, I looked it up, and I don't think he returned till maybe February back to wrestling. So, yeah, he was out for several months there with that arm injury, unfortunately. But Ric Flair out here, and again, very similar suplex. I mean, is it the Nature Boy's fault? I don't know. because it's Ric Flair both times. It's the same kind of weird timing. I don't know what's going on with that, but Flair does get the win, and everybody walks out healthy and safe, I think. As Rick with another message for everyone out there, back talking to Gordon Solie, talks about the 10 pounds of pure gold. Flair is the owner, the master, the man, whether you like it or not. Woo! And if that's all the competition they got for Ric Flair here on TV, he says he's not going to be back for a while. He likes an opponent that makes him sweat, makes him work in a ring. His ego wants a real man that measures even slightly up to the Nature Boy for competition here on TV. So Ric Flair basically saying, if that's all you're going to give me, I'm not coming back to wrestle on TV again.
He wants the best because he is the best. But it is television. Come on, Rick. You know you're not going to go up against Tommy Rich on television because you want the money.
If you want competition every week on TV, Rick, go over to Bill Watts. I mean, that's all I can really tell you at this point. I mean, that was the more competitive show, right? At least at some point it grew to be that way. But yeah, just kind of odd, kind of scary. It's like, oh man, the world champion says he's not even coming around here no more. But maybe it leads to something. I'm not sure if Flair's going to get some real competition here on TV, or if he's booked pretty well on Saturdays for a while and he knows he can't be here. So he made the comment for that reason. I'm not really sure what the story is there, but we continue on. Ron Fuller and Steve-O return to commentate on the replay of the Piper Bob Armstrong video from hour number 1. Steve-O going to talk about Bob Armstrong. He says he's going to fight for pride and Piper will feel the sting. Again, very generic commentary there by Steve. Meanwhile, Ron Fuller talks about knowing Bob Armstrong for a long, long time. If it hadn't been for people pulling the two apart, Roddy Piper would have been left without his teeth earlier today when those two went at it. So we get the replay in hour number 2 in case you missed it in the first hour. The brawl between Piper and Bob Armstrong shown again before the show goes off the air.
Yeah, I wonder if Steve-O, because obviously they like Steve-O. He's been there since September of 1980. And I wonder if he was a Jim Barnett boy. And I don't mean it in that.
No, I know what you're saying.
In that kind of terms. I just wondered if Barnett just liked the look of this guy and told whoever was booking, you got to put this guy over. He's got the looks. He has the talent. He just needs to bring that personality back.
It's got to be somebody pushing for him to be there. I agree with you there. So Jim Barnett's the only one that makes sense because Jim Barnett's the only one that's been there the entire year because we've changed bookers and Steve's been here for all of them.
Right. And there's no reason to bring him back after he hasn't been around for a couple months. A half.
Yeah, he's been gone since before the Omni. I mean, since before Thanksgiving, I think. If I remember, he got hurt on Thanksgiving.
He got hurt at the Thanksgiving show. Okay. And then he was supposed to face Brian St. John on that television match, which both of them got hurt. And then he was around 1 or 2 more weeks after that when Piper wasn't there because we joked about him wearing Piper's sports coat at the time.
Sure. Well,
we really haven't seen Steve since.
I don't really know what to make of it. Unfortunately, this whole thing happened before Roop got there, so I can't even ask Bob about it if he remembers why the hell Steve Olszewski had a job here for as long as he did, because most guys were 6 months to a year and they were gone. And that was even when they were hot and on top. I mean, could it be also, part of, he goes along with what he's asked to do out there. Basically, you can tell by the way he presents himself on TV. He's not going to cause you any trouble in the bars at night. It's almost the opposite of the Freebirds. All the talent in the world, but too much trouble to keep around. Steve-O, maybe not as much talent, but a lot easier to deal with. It's somebody you can, utilize to some degree.
Next time you are talking to Bob, though, ask Bob about when Steve-O came back in 84. I think it was before the Vince buyout, but it may have been after the Vince buyout. But ask him what his experiences with Steve-O were and if Steve ever happened to mention, his previous push in Georgia.
Well, I don't know if he had conversations like that with Steve, but I definitely will. He's on my short list of guys still to talk about as the next episode of The Stoop. We're going to be closing up the Georgia run. As Ole's going to sell to Crockett, and Bob's going to move on to Florida, wrestling and booking there and putting up with Lex Luger around the clock. That's a fun story I can't wait to get to with him. But right now we head back to 82 Georgia, guys. We've got another matchup in the ring. Got a couple matches left. Jimmy Garvin taking on Golden Boy Chick Donovan as Steve-O, and I got to keep pointing it out, remains on commentary because if I got to listen to it, you guys got to know about it. Gordon Solie going to rate these guys evenly Jimmy Garvin and Chick Donovan. I don't know if Jimmy would like to hear that one, Gordon, but Sully says hello to people out there in Marion, Ohio. Says he has family up there. Steve-O then says Ohio is a hotbed for wrestling. He even recalls being in Columbus one time with Tommy Rich and Ted DiBiase, and they, quote, danced holes in their shoes. I wrote, please make it stop, Jamie.
Hey, the guy's trying. He's not the same, but he's trying.
This is coming from a Caucasian male, but could you not be more white, just white bread than frickin' Steve-O here? Boy, I remember being up in Columbus and we danced holes in our shoes. I wanted to smack him when I heard that come out of his mouth.
You know, Ray, I have been told that I am the whitest white guy that people know. In the post office, some guys have said I am the whitest white guy they've ever met. If they decide, well, they only got me for another week. But if anybody mentions that in the next week, I'm going to tell them, hold on a second, let me pull up YouTube and let you listen to Steve-O. And there's the whitest white guy you will have ever met.
Yeah, just don't show him drunk Steve-O, because then you might still
no, I won't show him drunk
hold that moniker, but we'll continue on. So this, no matter what, Chick Donovan just popping through here at this point in time, but solid TV wrestling. Garvin going to control Chick, constantly trying to find his way out of several holds. Gordon puts over the professional courtesy of Jimmy Garvin in this matchup, sticking to a clean contest rather than going for the bad knee of Donovan, as he does have that wrapped up pretty good. Donovan was out for quite a while with a really bad knee injury, which could have been career ending, but ironically, I think he's still wrestling at like frickin' 912 years old.
And he's ripped.
Yeah, till to this day.
Yeah. I mean, the guy looks good. Yeah, he's been out since I think that knee injury occurred last June of 81. So he's out at least 6 months.
Yeah, it wasn't anything good, but you can see it here. They don't really have those braces back then, but it is heavily, I don't want to say bandaged, but there's definitely padding there. And it's not much longer after that, though, that Chick runs right into one of those nasty forearms from Garvin, and that's going to end it in 3 minutes and 26 seconds. But as Garvin celebrates, I wrote, still needs that mustache, still needs that beard.
However, if you look close enough, it looked like he was starting to grow the mustache.
Yes.
It jumped out at me.
No, at first I thought he was, and then I looked, I'm like, well, I don't really see it, so maybe he is, maybe he is. It was hard to tell, but no, I totally agree with you. I thought the same thing when I saw him raise his hands in victory here over Chick Donovan. As we go back to Gordon, we hear from Buzz Sawyer again, this time Les Thornton also joining, as, both guys have a Briscoe coming up at the Omni, it would seem. Jerry Briscoe taking on Les Thornton, the World Junior Champion, and Buzz Sawyer battling Jack Briscoe. Buzz putting over that, well, yeah, we're taking on the Briscoes, but they're both former world champions. Jack, a former world champ, and Jerry, a former world junior champ. Good point there, but again, those are some pretty big names coming to the Omni. And now that explains a little more why we saw the Briscoes and tag action in that VTR as well.
And opponents that know each other very well, because Buzz was, I think, trained by the Briscoes.
Yeah, I'm sure he spent plenty of time in the snake pit with them. I'm sure he did.
And when I first started watching Florida wrestling on the old satellite program network, Les Thornton was feuding with Jerry Briscoe at the time. So they all know each other very well. So I'm sure those Omni matches came off great.
Yeah, I would love to seen both of them, to be honest with you. So I told you, he just keeps coming back. Tommy Rich out here yet again, but it's not Steve-O, so I'm okay with that. This time, though, Gordon says, and it's been a slow build throughout the whole entire, at the beginning of the show, the winner of the Harley-Tommy match should be considered a number one contender. Halfway through the show, Tommy kind of alluding that we will be the number one contender. And by the end of the show, Gordon solely stating that the winner of the Harley Race and Tommy Rich match will get a title shot against the world champion Ric Flair. So it took a couple hours of prodding and things of that nature, and Ric Flair's there. He's backstage. Maybe they just worked it out in his schedule, and now they're confirming it. Either way, though, winner take all. Winner's going to be the national champion, and they're off to a world title shot against the Nature Boy.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck indeed. So we've got one more match here in the bag for this week on TV, and we're going to close up regional wrestling, guys. It is the National Tag Team Champions, the Superstar and Super Destroyer, taking on Buck Brannigan and Rick Starr, who was one of the convertible blondes, I do believe, down in ICW, Angelo Paffo's ICW, back when it was a three-man unit. Rip Rogers, Gary Royal, and Rick Starr for a limited time. Later on, Rip would also team with a bleached blonde Pez Watley as the convertible blondes, but that's another day in another territory. But so Rick Starr here, and he's you can see why he didn't last too long, even for ICW. But it's official at this point because we're on our final matchup. Roddy Piper clearly not returning, so Steve-O going to ride this shit all the way to the end this week. As Rick Starr, very green, as you can tell by the way he bumps here. Superstar trying to give him some counters, but they don't look too good, Jamie. So Superstar tries a double underhook suplex, and Rick Starr clearly has no idea how to take it, either that or he doesn't want to take it. So Edie just going to pivot and drop down into a front face lock. Again, I wrote, not good. Bug Brannigan finally tagging in, I'm sure to the delight of the tag champions, and a little slightly trimmer since his return here. Gordon Soley stating that Brannigan now under 300 pounds. Now, that might sound like a big boy, and he is, but he's not super beefy, right? So he's a pretty tall 300-pounder.
Yeah, and as I said last episode that we did, I think in the proper situation, he could have been at least a mid-card talent somewhere. I always enjoyed Buck Brannigan.
Well, he had the size, and he was capable for, what he was in the ring. I mean, he didn't look bad in the ring, basically. So I could have seen that in one of the smaller territories, giving him a bone and kind of moving up the card a little bit, even if it was a tag team situation. But him being in here and trimming down doesn't help too much. He gets beat down as well, just like Rick Starr. But Rick Starr going to tag back in, and man, can he take a turnbuckle shot? I'll give him that much. He tags back, though, to Brannigan, and I thought likely at the orders of the Masked Man, as the Masked Superstar with a nice-looking body block and the swinging neckbreaker. And I have to think Axe, Bill Eadie, told Rick Starr, go tag back to Buck. We weren't done with him. Like, I don't trust you to take my finisher here. But we're not done. Eadie hits the neckbreaker, which was clearly the finish. But Rick Starr runs in and breaks it up. I wrote, what the fuck? So Super Destroyer quickly tagging in, landing a nice drop kick and a series of quick elbows to pick up the victory here over Brannigan. Match goes 6 minutes, but clearly you can see Edie look up like, did you just fucking break this pinfall up?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. He wasn't supposed to do that. But you just said he was very green, so that kind of explains it.
Man, I mean, just don't do anything unless you're told. Keep your ears open and your mouth shut. And this was just not so good. But, I mean, I don't know if we're going to see Rick Starr back here again. I'll have to wait and see. But we close the show with the Outlaw Ron Bass, who is seeking a new tag team partner for the World Tag Team Title Tournament. We also hear closing comments from the Superstar and Super D, also coming for the World Tag Team titles. They want to hold all the tag team titles here in the NWA, as they say nobody is going to get in their way. Gordon Soley bidding us adieu. So long from the Peach State of Georgia.
What a way to close a show with Ron Bass.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess you trot the masked tag team out there with him, but I mean, yeah, Ron Bass. I mean, again, you talked about it though. They're slowly kind of just subliminally sticking him into these spots on these TV programs, into Ric Flair promos. They're kind of setting something up without us apparently realizing it.
Exactly, that's exactly what Ole's doing. He's setting up for the future. So, I mean, it's something else you could probably ask Bob Roop. How far out did Ole actually book things? I know there's a big difference between 81, 82, and 83 and 84.
Sure.
But I'm sure Ole's formula was basically the same. Find out whether he did book things out a couple of months in a row, or if he really just did it a month at a time.
Well, I'm sure Bob would have some sort of an idea of the format of how things were booked, because he was basically Ole's agent. He was when Ole wasn't making the loops, Bob was the one making the loops and giving taking the instructions from Ole and giving it to the boys as far as finishes and things of that nature. So I'm sure you had an idea of, how they would set up those loops and things like that in regards to the booking and the ideas and things of that nature. So that's something we can definitely touch on over there on the Wrestling Stoop, and maybe even relay it back here on an upcoming episode of Regional Rasslin'. But for right now, guys, we're going to close up shop, Jamie. Another 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks, 3 episodes of TV this week. Basically already done with the first month of 1982. The project is already in fast-moving motion as we head into the month of February, just a week out from the next Omni card. Lots of big matches upcoming. Tommy Rich and Harley Race and on down the line. So looking forward to that one.
And that's not all that's going to happen with this NWA Tag Team Tournament that will make a stop at the Omni, because this isn't going to be your normal tag team tournament.
No.
It's at least a 2-promotion tag team tournament, maybe even 3 promotions.
Well, if you listen to what Ole says, there's
it's
like a 46 promotion tag team tournament if you listen to the promos on Mid-Atlantic anyway.
Yeah, I know we're going to get a West Coast champion out of all the tournaments. But anyway, virtually a who's who is about to come through Georgia in the month of February.
Yeah.
And when Ray posts these shows, make sure you go and watch them so you know who we're talking about. Because when I say who's who, I mean who's who is coming up. And you're going to be like, holy shit, I had no idea this guy was ever in Georgia.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent coming
that guy
through.
was in Georgia.
Yeah, they're promoting something big, guys. It's going to be big when we get there. And not too many weeks away later on, in as Jamie just pointed out, the World Tag Team title tournament, and later in the month of February. But first, we've got another Omni card to tackle, more TV to talk about in the next episode. Jamie, I want to thank you so much for being here, and I'll let you promote some of the other things you got going on.
Well, you can find me also on almost every week, especially when there's current wrestling topics, on the Other Ship podcast, along with Michael Herrick, Drew Samuels, William Merriweather, and Chris Spiker. We preview every WWE Premium Live event, and then we'll review it, right afterwards. Let's see, I think coming up this week, we will be reviewing Saturday night's main event. So if you get a chance, please check us out on the Other Ship. And about a month and a half ago, I was on another WrestleCopia show, the Outdated Wrestling Hour with Bob Smith. So if you want to go back in Bob's archives, check that out. Bob and I had a great conversation. We've been in parallel universes for years, but somehow the two of us had never met. So that's what I have going on right now. And of course, I'm here with my main man, Ray Russell, doing Georgia Championship Wrestling 1982.
Hey, absolutely, guys. So we're going to wrap things up this week. I want to appreciate you again for taking the time out, Jamie, getting this in. And we'll be back soon, guys. I wish I knew what we had on the docket for next week's episode right now. I know Steve Crawford's on assignment somewhere. I got to figure out where the hell he's on assignment this time. He's always out on assignment somewhere. And so we're going to try to get him back on and continue on our 77 Memphis. Vandal Drummond hanging in there, waiting to do a little more Los Angeles. I got Richard Vicek I got to get a hold of. Last time I tried to get Richard on the show, he was off to Disney World or Disneyland. I don't remember which one, but having a good vacation with the family. So we got to get him back on board here soon as well. And then we're still hanging in there. I got tons of notes, tons of research ready for the St. Louis project, which is getting ready to launch. So stay tuned, guys. Got a whole lot going on. And, of course, 85 Memphis with Gene Jackson. Ray Canty's just killing it right now with the comedy over there on Memphis 85. So until next time, guys, we'll see you soon with more regional wrestling, where we talk the territories.